We're back with bodybuilding, Eric. Let's face it. The greatest sport. We don't need to talk about so just so everyone knows, every time you hear us with a power lifter, a weightlifter, or a strong man, strong woman competitor, or any other lifting sport, it's basically filler. We couldn't find a bodybuilder.
Yeah, so we started with a different title for the podcast,
Right.
and basically we realized we could not have a bodybuilder on every single time or talk about bodybuilding that frequently. So then we kind of backpedaled and went, oh, maybe we should unite the tribes.
Right.
But no, today we have one of the most dominant athletes in terms of not just competitive bodybuilding in the classic bodybuilding, classic physique division, but I would say an ambassador for the artistic side of bodybuilding. And in all seriousness, while we pretend our jokes, we make them about the preference we have for bodybuilding, even though Terence Ruffin, who is our guest today, is a bodybuilder and embodies some of the aspects of bodybuilding I love the most. He's also a history buff. He's also someone who's involved in evidence-based training as a coach himself. He's well-read, he has common sense, and he's exactly the change that I like to see in this modern era of bodybuilding where we've gotten away from magazines. Individual athletes have a platform, and the best of them are using that platform for good, doing ethical promotion of good information, answering questions, making themselves available, and challenging their audience to actually think. So while we joke about this just being another hunky meat fest, as Omar might put it, and it is that, don't get me wrong, don't turn away, it's still there. I think this is actually a fantastic episode where it really connects to a lot of topics dear to the cult's heart.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I joke often about bodybuilding, but through your lens, through this prism, through Iron Culture, I've been exposed to bodybuilding much more so the athletes, the individuals, and then also with you when you competed. And I honestly, I just find myself liking it more and more. That it could just be Eric, the people Eric introduces me to, where it's like kind of you're in the party and you got your friend, and your friend knows all the right people. So it's like, oh, this is this person. So I have a fantastic experience. But as you said, Eric, underneath the hood, so underneath kind of the physique, like, oh yeah, this person has a good physique. It's like, well, wait a second, he also has very good posing. There's thought put behind this. There's an artistic process to this. And then also, as you said, being a history buff, caring about providing good information, we're reaching now basically the mythical promise of the bodybuilder from all the times past where we would have, 100 years ago now, man, when they would say like, oh, you want to look like me, you got to do this. It's like, well, now we actually are experiencing this where it's someone at the top of their game giving out free information, trying to help individuals out, putting their own twist on it, all thanks to the internet. So I think it was an excellent idea, Eric, on your part, deciding to have Terrence on. Tell me about this. I thought it was a very thought-provoking conversation where he kind of got into, and it makes sense, where once again, his posing is top-notch. A little bit of artistic background there, has an interest in that, representing himself. And I think those are some of the pieces that to the outsider, when they think about that, when they think about bodybuilding, and we're talking actually off air, you and myself, about Brad Pitt and Burn After Reading, like some of the stereotypes or caricatures that they create for trainers, lifters, or bodybuilders. Oh, they're all narcissists. They're all, of course, they look great. They have to be complete narcissists. And to hear this, a quiet, composed, thoughtful individual talk about a sport and something he does that he loves and wax on about it, I thought it was great.
Yeah, and he's also just a very unique individual in that he's making these revelations, he's having these thoughts, and he's progressing as an individual at a younger age than most people have. He was at the time, he was the youngest person to get an IFBB pro card, winning the 2014 NPC Nationals in the lightweight class. And then shortly after that, having the classic physique division emerge and giving him more options and decisions that he felt more comfortable with and true to him for where he wanted to compete as a pro. And that whole evolution of his physique and the decisions and a new pathway emerging has also come concurrently with all the stuff you just talked about. So I think you, all the cultists, you're in for a treat. There's some good discussion here relating to choices in bodybuilding, the essence of what bodybuilding can be for some, and also what social media is today, what it can be, and how it compares to earlier eras of the sport.
Yeah, and last thing I'll probably say, Eric, I'm just going to get ahead of the controversy. We would like to publicly apologize to Chris Bumstead. We consider him a dear friend of the cult. You'll understand why later on. It's no one's fault, and it wasn't myself or Eric's idea or Terrence's idea. It kind of just happened. In fact, I personally suspect it was a rogue AI influencing us. But regardless, we can't wait to have Chris back on and Terrence, and I think everyone's going to enjoy this episode. Whew. We have another bodybuilding episode, and I think we should just get right to it and ask Terrence. Lovely having you on Iron Culture. We had your arch nemesis, I've been told, Chris Bumstead, on, and I noticed when Chris competed at the Olympia, and I think he did great or whatever, maybe placed first. He had a secret weapon, and the secret weapon was something like kind of right above the lip, very prominent there. It was a mustache. And I will know that you are very serious at whatever competition it is when you unlock that secret power, that next level. So, Chris, sure, you could say dedication, nutrition, training, whatever, all those things coalesce together to allow him to, win that Mr. Olympia. Cool for classic bodybuilding, whatever. What is going to be your secret power? How will we know that basically you're going Super Saiyan on everyone? What is your mustache, my friend?
I was not ready for this question at all.
But it's a deep
Yo,
one.
I think my craziest hairdo, like when I went, I guess Super Saiyan was Toronto 2018, where I had like the 70s sideburns, the mustache and everything. Yeah, full old school. Uh,
Now, I think you can bring that back. I think the chops. I know there is a slight conflict there. How does the Air Force respond to the chops? Can the shaving waiver get you through that, or are they going to try to control the Saiyan powers?
oh, luckily I don't have to worry about that anymore. I separated back in 2017, so it's been out for about 3 years now. Luckily, life's a lot simpler now without shaving waivers and taking leave and things like that.
Well, yeah. So I mean, you did your time supposedly, right? But you're still on that non-active airman contract. I mean, Big Brother's there. I think we need to acknowledge, especially in the 2020 reality where we have some government and political conflicts. Myself and Omar, we've had a number of issues with certain powers that be that are out there. So I'm just saying, if you see a predator drone looking down on you while you have chops, are you worried? Or is this something you don't feel comfortable saying on Skype, which we know as, a 5G Lizard Lord, control
Yeah,
network?
let's keep that a secret for now. Definitely don't want the people listening in.
Okay. He's smart, folks. The strategic type of thinking, I think not only did you learn in the Air Force, but now it's going to prevent you from being killed in a predator drone strike for having those chops that will get you to that Super Saiyan level. So I guess what we're asking is, can you confirm that you were going to have dyed yellow chops, Super Saiyan style, on the Olympia stage this next time you compete?
Let's keep that a secret. I want guys to, how Dorian used to be the shadow. He didn't tell you how he was gonna look on stage. We're just gonna kind of go with those vibes and follow that legacy right there.
I can't be mad at that. Well, in all seriousness, though, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm a huge fan of your physique. I'm also a huge fan of the way you present yourself on stage and kind of your just overall approach. I think you are, there's a lot of pro bodybuilders out there, but they're very true professional bodybuilders who just exude professionalism. I think you are one of them. So thank you for doing your thing.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. Thank you for those words of kindness for sure. Yeah.
You got it, man. So for those who don't know, Terence Ruffin is actually you turned pro as a bodybuilder back in the 2014 NPC Nationals. I believe you were a lightweight. Could you tell us a little more about that experience and what your original goals were when you start competing as an amateur?
It's funny how similar my goals actually are. I found out about bodybuilding in 2012 I was going through TACP, if you've ever heard that, Air Force career. Yeah, so it's like a special forces type of deal. They call close air support for, the Army. I've heard some go to Secret Service, the Rangers, wherever. It's a lot of different options for them to deploy with. So I was trying out for that. I did not end up making it. I had a month left and ended up washing out of the pipeline. And really soon after that, I started lifting weights, and I was like, "Oh crap! Putting on muscle. This is pretty awesome." And then I got reassigned my new job, which was oh my goodness, electronic warfare, avionics. And I met these two guys, and they told me you should probably get into bodybuilding. And I was like, all right. So I did my research, and my research was going to the store and picking up two bodybuilding magazines. And yeah, on the cover of the magazine was Dexter Jackson. And after that, I was like, yeah, I want to try this out. So, skip ahead a bit, 2014. I had only done two shows, first show in 2013, the second one earlier that year. My original goal wasn't to try to get my pro card until I was 180 pounds on stage, and I'm still not quite there yet, which is pretty funny. But a guy, a pro bodybuilder, convinced me to go and try it out. And in 2014, in November at NPC Nationals, went down there and took a chance. I was 21 years old at the time. 21 years old in a month. My birthday was like 4 weeks, before the show, and ended up winning that and becoming like the youngest pro bodybuilder at that time.
It's a very cool story. Did you have any expectations of how well you might do at 2014 Nationals at the time?
I really had no idea. I just, I'm really big into, taking in listening to people who have experience and kind of leaning on that. I think that's the reason why I've been able to progress so quickly. Uh, just staying humble. And luckily I found the right people to listen to, because sometimes people find the wrong people and it actually slows down the progress. So I had no idea. I just listened to them. They said I would do well. And I just kind of focused on doing everything I could to be at my best.
Well, I'd say you were quite successful, my man. I've got a question for you. So you now compete in classic bodybuilding. You turned pro as a bodybuilder. When did you become aware of classic bodybuilding as a division, and when did you start considering it as a pathway?
Yeah. So yeah, 2014. Yeah, definitely no classic physique. At the time I was like, well, I guess I got to get ready for this 212, and being 155 pounds. That was like a monumental task ahead. And I was really optimistic about it, though. I was still very new to bodybuilding, so I was thinking, well, maybe I'm one of those guys that'll grow really, really easily. Definitely not. Definitely, definitely didn't grow very quickly at all. I'm still not quite big enough to do 212. And but luckily, so 2015, honestly, there was still no early on. There's still no talks of classic physique at all. I think they started kind of mentioning it near the end of the year. And so I spent most of 2015 just in the off season trying to grow. And once I heard about it, I wasn't convinced that I would do it. Honestly, I'm really like, with the 212, I was like, well, this is my original goal. Let me kind of stick to that. I don't know what this new class is. So instead of trying to change before seeing what it's about, let me just stick here. I didn't make the change or the decision to switch until I think after the first show. I kind of saw, what it was about, and I thought I would, just fit better there. So around probably January time frame, I started to get ready for my first competition. Oh, January of 2016. Yeah.
And then I believe that year you won a number of titles as a classic physique competitor. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I, going into classic, I literally had no idea how I would do because, especially for a bodybuilder, competing against guys with different heights and different weights was foreign to me. I'm like, these guys are like a foot taller than me. Some are like 40 pounds heavier. I'm like, how is this supposed to work? So, with my first show, I got third place. Breon Ansley won, and Darren Charles took second, and both of those guys are you got a classic Miss Olympia 2 time, and then you got Darren Charles, a legend, 90s bodybuilder. So after that show, I felt great, honestly. I mean, I didn't win, but I got the feeling, okay, well, I can compete in this class and do well. The following week, I went to Tampa, and I ended up beating Darren Charles there, and winning my first pro show. So it was definitely awesome 2 weeks.
So that was 2016 in Tampa. Do you remember what month that competition was in?
Tampa's the first weekend in August, and my first show, Prestige Crystal Cup, was the last week in July.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know where I was in August in 2016?
Tampa, Florida.
I actually did see you compete in your first show because I was out in Florida for my PhD studies with Dr. Zerdos. That's actually in Boca Raton. But my friend who we've had on the show, Lauren Conlon, she was competing in the Tampa Pro as well in the bikini class. I don't know if you met her or who that is, but she competed there, and I came out to support her and see her do that. And I saw Darren Charles, and I am almost positive that I saw you in that show as well. So, little throwback, little fun connection there. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, man. So, do you think that the classic physique division has gotten more competitive in the last 4 years?
100%. And I knew it would. I remember the first year people were a little disappointed with the quality of competitors, but in my head, I always saw what it could be. That first year, there was only actually one guy who qualified, as an actual who turned pro as a classic physique guy, Robert Timms. Everyone else was either like a crossover from bodybuilding, me, Breon, or physique like Arash and a couple other guys. So it definitely needed some time to kind of people needed time to kind of to let it grow. And each and every year, the competition has gotten much better each and every year. It's ridiculous. A lot of guys that were in that first Mr. Olympia can't qualify now just because these competitors have gotten better and better, and it's been tough even for me to keep up with it. I got ninth my first year, sixth the second year, and then I dropped back down to ninth in 2018. So even myself, I had to take a year off and to get bigger and be ready to compete.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And I think that's one thing is your progress has very much kind of stayed close to the progress of the class. So, you came out of the gates real hot. You won the Tampa and I believe the Kentucky Muscle Show as well in 2016. And then, like you said, first time at the Olympia in the new division, you placed top 10. You move up to sixth. You drop back to ninth. But then in the last couple of years, you've really came out strong. I think you won the Niagara Falls Pro Show in 2019. And then most recently, most impressively, and I think in a very close decision and the best physique I've seen, in the 2020 Arnold, you just recently placed second, which I thought was just an incredible physique that you brought to the table. So talk to me a little bit about how you've seen the need to push yourself forward as the class has advanced and how the last couple of years have been for you as you've seemingly gotten pushed back, like you said, to ninth, but now you've come forward and you seem to be at the top of the division.
Oh man. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I think the only thing that I've really done was just found people that I believe that could help me get there. Joe Bennett has been a great trainer for me, and I think that's made the biggest difference getting ready to compete with these guys this year. And I also started working with John Meadows. I know you interviewed him as well recently, and he's also a great guy who's helped me kind of get to where I need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, John Meadows is just another true professional. I love how open, honest, and genuine he is, and it's been a pleasure to have him on Iron Culture, I believe twice, right, Omar?
Yeah.
Yep. And the first time we had John Meadows on was way back when we had Mike Ibsatel on as well, and we discussed anabolics, specifically in the context of bodybuilding. And we talked a little bit about that last time he was on as well, when we had the arch enemy Chris Bumstead on, and we also had myself and a few other people, and we basically talked about how bodybuilding is a subjective sport, and each competitor is trying to reach some aesthetic ideal. This could be informed by the division they're trying to compete in. This could be that they are finding themselves better fit into a certain division, and they go, hey, I'm just going to go where my physique lends itself towards naturally. Or they might be deciding based on what decisions they want to make, where they want to compete. So for example, Omar asked me about, why did I stay natural? Why did I decide to compete as a natural bodybuilder? Why did Chris Bumstead decide to go classic? He talked about how it is truly impressive and a full-time job for the open division IFBB pro bodybuilders to get to the point where they're 5'6", 250 pounds on stage. And I think regardless of what someone's personal preferences are or what they think about it, we have to acknowledge just how difficult that is, because anabolics don't change thermodynamics. You have to make eating a full-time job to get to that position. So with that question, I want to transition to asking you, when you were 21 in 2014 and, you're in the lightweight division, had you thought about, if I want to keep going in this sport, what decisions I do and don't want to make? And did that impact the kind of the direction you took, knowing that you were turning pro against guys who might be 100+ pounds heavier than you on stage?
Well, at the time I was young, and you don't have quite the perspective you do as you get older. So yeah, I kind of thought about it real quickly when I was, kind of willing to do anything it took to get to where I needed to be. As I get older, I'm a little bit happier with how my physique is looking. I'm happier that I'm in good health, and I kind of want to. I kind of like where I am with classic, so I don't really see myself, getting a lot heavier and moving to the 212. Even just, even for the simple fact of just being like heavier in the off season, heavier throughout your life, that can have, negative effects on your health too, just having that extra mass on you. So I like classic. Like I said, I like the way I look, and I like being able to move around and do stuff, like I am. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts and my thought process on that and how it's changed a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. Omar, we've talked about this before, the concept of bodybuilding, like other sports that have risks that come with them, that probably the most ethical thing we can do, if anyone who wants to talk about bodybuilding, is to give people informed consent. In research, when we actually have to do a study, we have to go through an ethics board. In the States, it's called an IRB, Institutional Review Board, and we have to give participants what's known as genuine informed consent. So, for example, an example of what looks like informed consent but is not, and I'm going to make sure this actually makes sense eventually, is if I went to someone who I was in a position of power over, let's say a student, and I was teaching the class, and I said, hey, would you like to do my study? Here's the details. That's technically not genuine informed consent if they were to give it, because I'm in a position of power, right? Another version of genuine informed consent that is not actually genuine informed consent is if I said, hey, you should compete in bodybuilding. You look great. You do real well. Full stop, right? Because you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. You don't know that you're going to have dreams about pizza at some point 3 weeks out. And then at some point 3 months post-competition, you're going to be wondering why you can't stop eating pizza. So
Yeah.
those are the types of things that in my career I've tried to make sure that people are aware of. And the things you have to let someone know to be aware of in enhanced bodybuilding is another step, So I see it as a very good thing, regardless of what someone's opinions are about the different divisions, whether they're watered down. There's too many. They don't like the the judging criteria. I've heard of many things, and those aren't my opinions, but I can understand people that think that. What I do like is that it gives people the opportunity to compete in a unified, large organization at a very high level, but they don't necessarily have to go from being, let's say, very gifted and able to compete in a smaller weight class and turn pro. For those who don't know this, I know no one thinks this on the internet, but there's actually a lot of people who compete at a very high level in the NPC, especially in the lower weight classes, who are actually drug-free. Terrence, I'm sure you know many of them, but they typically don't win the overall, and many of them don't go on to compete as a pro, but there are some bantams, lightweights, and maybe even some middleweights out there who I have personally known who are drug-free. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, just how there is some decisions one has to make, and there's some game changes. You know, if you have the right shape, you're a good poser, and you know how to get conditioned, you can do far better as an amateur than you have even a possibility once you turn to the pros. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think there can be a couple pro athletes that are natural. Not many at all, but I definitely think it's possible. And just, I mean, people always tell me, you don't know what they do in their home, or this or that, and that's completely true. But just kind of, using my own, thought process. If this person gained a whole bunch of weight, sometime throughout the career, if they look pretty similar from when they were 20 to when they were 40, that's a good way to kind of think about it. Just a lot of, things that aren't, you can't say that are 100%, but they definitely lend you toward believing them that they are natural, and that's my opinion, I believe. But, no, I definitely believe, especially in the amateur, level, there can be very good natural athletes, for sure.
Yeah. So I think the cool thing is that circa 2005, 2006, 2007, when I was first looking at bodybuilding, making this decision for myself, and thinking about going the direction of the IFBB Pro League, it was I had to make the decision to be okay with pretty much anything and everything if I wanted to go that route. And at the time, the only decision I had was, well, let's go natural bodybuilding. Let's go drug tested and just draw that line in the sand. And I think that's good. Obviously, I would still make that decision again, and I think that's probably the safest. And if we were to argue about it, but I don't judge anyone else for making other decisions. But I do like that now in the IFBB, there's basically like 3 levels. You can decide to stick with classic bodybuilding, and it's very much a lot of the same judging criteria, ideals, lines, all the things that are supposed to be in bodybuilding that have gone away because of some of the heavy drug use. There's the 212, which sometimes is just seen as like short IFBB pros. Yeah, exactly. But there's absolutely something that someone can do if they're it's a decision. If they have really good genetics, great lines, they get into good shape, and they don't want to be 240, but they could. And then, of course, you have the full-blown thing. So talk to me about what drove you towards each decision along the way, how that changed, and ultimately, what do you have to do, if you're comfortable talking about it, as someone who plans to stay in the classic bodybuilding division?
So, for me, open bodybuilding was never really something I thought about too much, just because of my height. I'm being 5'5". There aren't many people that my height that compete in the open. As for 212, though, I mean, that was definitely a possibility, but early on I noticed that I wasn't able to. I have great genetics for getting lean. I have a good structure, but not for putting on mass to the level of those guys. I look at pictures of Flex Lewis when he was my age, and he was already 30 pounds heavier. Actually, no, when he was like 22, he was like 30-40 pounds heavier than me. So definitely, after some time and after seeing kind of getting an idea of what my genetics were, and what the limits were, I kind of thought that yeah, maybe classic was probably the best bet, and it's where I fit based on my physique and things. I just was blessed enough that the posing thing was also something I was good at that fit really well with classic. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad of these changes just because we wouldn't have you in the pro ranks and getting the same kind of level of exposure without some of those delineations. You would either maybe you would decide, after competing to go a different direction, or you would try to put on mass and make your lines as not look as good. But I'm really pleased to see that you have that ability to display your physique at what I think is a direction it should be going. And that's my opinion about your body, and you have to take it. No, I'm just kidding. No, but in all seriousness, speaking of posing, speaking of displaying your physique, I think some people know you most for some of your iconic posing routines, like your I'm a Survivor routine, which was fantastic. But I think you've done many that are quite good. That's just probably the one that's known the best. Why do you put so much effort into your posing routine? What does it mean to you? And what goes into your head when you start setting up kind of the choreography for a routine?
I have like an art background, so I've always been an artist. When I was a kid, I would draw art and sell it. As I got older, I applied for some art colleges, and so it's always been a thing that I enjoyed. My mom was really much into dance. I never was really into dance, but my mom was, so I was around it. And I saw her teach some type of like more performance arts type stuff. So. Um, that's kind of what I guess what my passion for it comes from. And honestly, like going on stage, I don't like in front of all these people. I don't want to have anything subpar. I don't want to embarrass myself. So it's a little bit of a fear factor, like, oh, I gotta make something that's good because I don't want people up there bored while I'm there. That's very discouraging. So um, that definitely plays a factor. And how I choose my routines and how I pick them, the music always comes first. I definitely like to have music that has a very instant tempo. So like it kind of starts off slow and builds up. I got to talk to Lee and he kind of agreed. We call it like movie trailer music. Like how movies, yeah, and that's basically what I like to pose to a lot because it evokes a feeling within people like the way it's supposed to because movie trailers they try to get you excited for the movie and yeah, so I choose it that way. And I try to make my poses match with the song, with the beat, and with even to a certain extent with the words if possible. And yeah, that's kind of how I come up with my routines.
I think, Omar, I don't know if you've watched any of his routines, but I think with your appreciation of, I would say it, non-simplistic music, other ways of feeling things, having more depth of emotion, I think you'd appreciate the way Terrence poses because he will, like you said, it doesn't just choose to pose on beat or at the same tempo. He will fit his poses and the way he does things. And this is something that I'm not as good at, but I love posing. Like the posing routine is something I'm a part of. I'm a big fan of as well. But like you said, with the words, the kind of the crescendo of the epic music as it goes up, and you can tell that a lot of thought goes into it on top of a lot of natural talent. And I do think that's probably why his posing routines are more iconic than others who are still good posers. Because there's something to be said for, being able to hit a kneeling pose, being able to do it on beat, but having kind of the choice of music, the choice of words, all of that going together and the build up, I think there's almost like a narrative arc to the way that Tony poses, which I think you'd really appreciate, Omar.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, Eric, you mentioned it before that there's a performance art aspect to bodybuilding. And I saw your routine, Eric, and I liked it. And when I heard Terrence say just about the intent behind picking the music, I only know a few posing routines, okay? And this is probably not the best one. But first, when I watched Pumping Iron for the first time, and I saw Ed Corney when he was doing some of the posing, and then you have the behind the scenes footage where they're at the art show and he was doing how graceful he was. But I actually was thinking as soon as you started saying picking the right music and almost movie trailer, I don't know if he's the first one, but I remember Frank Zane posed to One of These Days by Pink Floyd which is an excellent song choice of just kind of a crescendo, building the momentum with the bass is like bum 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 as it starts. And then I think he was in Germany. I could be wrong. Eric's like, no, that was 81 and it was actually in Stuttgart. I'm like, okay, I thought that was Germany. But and they say like Frank Zane, like just the announcer says it, and then he steps down, and it's a whole thing, like it's a whole artistic routine. And I actually think probably, I don't know, you guys could correct me, but there are various elements in open bodybuilding, I guess you would call it, that kind of through time kind of got sifted out a little bit. Not the performance art necessarily aspect, but kind of that grace. Maybe I'm thinking grace in my head when it comes to the posing, and elegance. Lines is something Eric has said a few times. Maybe Eric, the pivot that I'd want, where you say about the role of posing, would be the appeal for Terrence, for you, man, about classic bodybuilding, like why you see, like that is when you visualize yourself, your physique, and where you want to be. That's kind of it. And talking with the arch nemesis Chris Bumstead, where he was describing, the appeal for him, what he wanted, and also the genuine enthusiasm, it seems like, by the audience. It really seems like it has become its own thing and will continue to become its own thing. It's not like, sometimes whatever, an organization, doesn't matter if it's bodybuilding or fitness related, they try and venture into a new territory, and the audience isn't really that receptive. They like the old way instead. It really seems like there's some momentum behind it. So can you just talk to me about the appeal first for you of classic bodybuilding, and then what you think the appeal for the audience, why it seems like it's resonating with so many individuals?
I think that the appeal definitely comes from, I would say definitely people like, it's not exactly 70s bodybuilding, it's not the golden era, but it definitely does emulate that in certain aspects. I think it takes the best aspects from every era, the posing, the shape of those guys. I think it more so, honestly, is reminiscent of like the late 80s, guys like Lila Brada. I think we way more, resemble guys from that area, because in that time, Risk of Spartan was the first guy with striated glutes. Posing routines were very much highlighted. Lila Brada, I think, is the best poser of all time. So, that era, I definitely believe, was one of the best eras, outside of, I guess, people love the 90s too, early 90s with Ronnie, Flex, and Kevin. But I definitely think that's the reason why it's so appealing, because guys are in shape. They have that deep separation, which I think that's the biggest thing in open that kind of falls. That's kind of different from earlier bodybuilders. The lines aren't as deep on most bodybuilders. And, guys like Phil, that's why he dominates so much, because he has that deep separation and things like that. But, and on top of that, the waists are tight. Everything's very aesthetic. And it reminds you more of art, and I think that's sometimes lost, even with, even Arnold agrees to that. You go to his show, and his show is the only show where posing is judged for the open bodybuilders. So but within classic, it's just kind of something that's done. We don't get judged on our posing routines, but there's definitely guys who take pride in what they show and what they present on stage in that sense. Yeah, so I kind of think that's the reason why it appeals to other people. It appeals to me because I don't know, I enjoy it. I enjoy the routines. I enjoy the competition. Everybody's kind, and we get along. I enjoy just everything about classic physique. I don't have any issues with it at all.
No, I think that's I've thought about this, and I think about how there's a lot more that goes into societal perceptions and cultural changes than we can often predict. So the era of the mass monster, which you can arguably say started with Dorian Yates and then was extended by Ronnie, and then everyone around them trying to chase them and losing their lines while these guys could keep it and be so big, which is why they're multi-time Mr. Olympia. Some could argue that it was just, Dorian and Ronnie, creating the idyllic image that everyone's going towards. But I think there's more to it than that. You talked about the late 80s and the mid 80s as kind of the era that's most similar to classic, and I agree. And I think another thing that people forget about the 80s is it was right around the time, the late 80s, early 90s, where all of a sudden anabolics became vilified in American culture. And what that means is that what was already happening in bodybuilding, which is, aggressive use of anabolics, now became seen differently culturally. It was no longer just this thing that they do in that sport, that's probably similar to other sports but more extreme, but it's not seen as this like cultural evil like crack cocaine or something like that. It became like that. And now all of a sudden, bodybuilding became hardcore to a greater degree by definition of being counterculture to what was considered okay. So we had the combined factor. And if you look at, like, for example, some of the muscle magazines around that time, they took a darker tone. I'm thinking like, muscular development in this later phase. They use the terms underground a lot. You got people who are going to prison and writing about it. A lot of the names who became popular in bodybuilding who were talking about the drug side of it were sometimes people who had legal troubles because of it. So all of a sudden, kind of this underground counterculture, screw the system, hardcore metal kind of attitude happened in the 90s and continued on for a while. And this coincided with the time period where you see guys getting bigger and hitting most musculars to Metallica for the 99th time on stage in a single show. And it's just a good thing that people didn't, commit suicide while watching it, because it gets so tedious and became this constant, like, again. And it almost became the kind of this cultural meme of itself. So I think classic bodybuilding, when it got created, a lot of people were like, oh, here we go, another division. Like, what's the point? This is getting crazy. But what they didn't anticipate is that it would give a cultural nuance to people interested in bodybuilding to say, hey, there was a lot of people who loved Bob Paris's physique, Frank Zane's physique, Lee Labrada's physique, that posing style. And now they actually have a stage where not only can that be appreciated on the internet, but they can compete in it and be rewarded for it and find a community of people who are also interested in it. So I don't know what you think about that. That's my armchair anthropology, degree showing itself, which I did fail.
I like that take. I like your take a lot. I definitely agree. That definitely makes a lot of sense, for sure.
Okay, cool. So if you agree, then that's end of two. Omar always agrees with me, so that means that's definitely what would happen. No, but I just think that's interesting. I think the changing kind of essences of bodybuilding, of course, are going to change over time. That's natural, and I don't think any era is better than another. But I do like that now we have more options for different flavors of bodybuilding, which I think is kind of cool. So let's talk about your flavor a little bit. You messaged me on Instagram a little while back, and you're asking me about how I found some of the information about some of the folks from, not even the golden era, but like John Grimmick, like the silver era. I just wonder, do you have any appreciation, interest, or curiosity related to the history, and how does that kind of impact your awareness, feel, or participation in bodybuilding?
No, I definitely think it's important to know the history of something you're doing and competing in, even if it's for the simple fact of not repeating things that were done incorrectly, or giving you, hope and understanding of things, Like, people ask me all the time, like, honestly, I feel like they're very, they should know these answers. Like, they say, trying to think of something, like, say, for instance, I do Q&As. People ask me things like, oh, I'm 22. Is it too late to start bodybuilding? I'm like, well, Phil Heath didn't start till after he graduated college. So a little bit of history there, knowing your bodybuilders. Or, hey, well, following this plan, give me this physique. And I'm like, well, we can look at a couple guys who are training partners, and obviously they didn't not have the same physique, even if they did the same training. So even though, like, in the scientific sense, we know that's, even if you don't know a lot about, science and training, even just knowing that information, knowing your history, can stop you from, making certain mistakes and having certain, things that doing the wrong thing and wasting your time. But I just like history. I've always liked history. I read about Eugene Sandow, how he was I forget the word now. Not a strong man. Strong man, yeah. How he kind of got into it. How he created the first bodybuilding show, 1902, the Great Competition, and how it's just interesting to kind of read that stuff, and how, in that time the judges went from person to person, like right in their face, and they even judged their skin quality, and kind of how that, even if the skin quality isn't judged now, that's still something that is still a part of it, even if it's not an exact criteria. It's still a part of judging, and it's still how things work. I definitely enjoy all of that, and I think it's important to know, uh, for sure, for sure.
No, that's absolutely something we've talked about many times on Iron Culture. And, an important part, like the tagline of Iron Culture, or one of the couple, is history, science, and culture. And I think there is a number of times where I've seen people who are engaged with one but not the other, and they make errors, I think the one that's most common in kind of the quote unquote evidence-based community is we, take a shit on and talk crap about people who are doing what someone else did in the past, or they have an old school training partner or a coach who's using a method that is tried and true, and it absolutely does work, but it's not up to date with quote unquote what's optimal. And that's what we talk the most crap about. But honestly, I think a greater danger, and what happens just as, if not more frequently, is that people confuse science for marketing, because science has always been used for marketing, whether it's the muscle tech stuff in the 90s, the two guys in the lab coats, and I'm like, really, you wore lab coats just to make a protein powder, and kind of positioning science as an authority and really as a marketing tactic, and people getting caught up in these pseudoscientific claims because they think it's the next best thing. But
Yeah.
if they simply had some of that common sense, which I think comes from studying history, seeing what is more normal and been around for decades and decades, and now in bodybuilding over 100 years, like you were talking about, I think they're much less prone to make those errors and to understand, hey, high frequency training that I learned about last week and that I saw some influencer post a study about is not going to change the game, So how do you think about the interaction between common sense, history, and science? How do they
Oh
play hand?
yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think about that from time to time, even for the simple fact of certain people won't do certain things, or train a certain way if it hasn't been proven by science yet. And I'm like, well, science, there's a lot of studies that are proving things that guys have done for 20, 30 years now. And I'm like, well, what if they would have waited? I mean, they can't wait 20, 30 years to do those things. You kind of have to, sometimes take a step forward, try it out, and see if it works. Definitely, I definitely think that. So I think that's something that can be an issue with the evidence-based community. I think everyone has, I don't know what you call the other community, I don't know, we got people call it the bro community or whatever, but I think on their end, being hard-headed and just saying, "Oh, well, this guy did it," can also lead to errors as well. Because, if they look at guys like Ronnie or Dexter and try to follow what they did, they don't have those same genetics. They don't have that same. They can't do what they did. 99% of the world can't do what Ronnie or Dexter does. And I think it's falling in the balance, like using it, studies and evidence-based practices, and drawing your own conclusions, and with actual experience. So that's kind of where I like to kind of draw the line.
I love it, and I think that's a fantastic integration of common sense, just being aware of what's happening, and also appropriate positioning of science. So Terrence, you are 27?
27 October.
27 in October. Okay, so Omar and I are what you would call old in comparison to you. We both have a 3 in front of our name. Omar, as you can tell, he's got a little bit of grays right here.
I actually have a 5 in front of my name.
You have a 5 in front of your name. Mm-hmm. I think that early onset Alzheimer's is affecting your math.
Right, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you can see mental faculty being affected on Omar's side. I'm wearing a hat to cover things up. We're both grasping at the straws of our fading youth every day, unlike you. And Omar, I don't know about you, but back when we first got in the game, how often would you have an IFBB pro talking about the appropriate utilization of evidence-based practice in contrast with some things like this? Because I don't know about you, but I felt if I got in a conversation with IBB Pro, I was going to get attacked immediately most of the time for even mentioning science.
No, I think you're definitely right. You know, Terrence, when I started bodybuilding back in the 80s, and there'd be guys like Lee Haney and just a bunch of individuals out there, they, from what they were saying in the magazines, because I think it was interesting what you said, where you picked up magazines, two magazines, right? When you wanted to get into bodybuilding and see what's going on. I think some of the stuff is perpetuated more by the magazines and the desire to sell almost an image, and then the IFBB pros are an avatar of what is being parroted. So you would assume that, oh yeah, like this is what they're gonna do. And there's been this kind of cool, you know, we just heard it from Terrence here, and also being a history buff. I mean, you're a perfect fit for the iron culture. But as good information becomes more freely available, seeing it percolate all over. So now hearing Terrence talk about the evidence-based community, communicating with you, trying to get, you know, the best possible practices, because we all are interested in the same thing, self-betterment and trying to actualize the best version of ourselves, rather than just kind of like, yeah, here's the big guy over there. Like, he did that. I'm going to do that now. It's like, wait a second. I don't know if that's going to work for you, you know? And I think that almost mirrors, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, Terrence. I think it almost mirrors the potential power of the internet or social media, in the sense that maybe organizers, when classic bodybuilding was first announced, like, oh, I think this could be popular. Seems like some people are interested in some of those physiques, Lee Labrada. Maybe let's bring it back and let's see what happens. And if it's just up to the magazines, because it's one directional, right? We spoke before, Eric, about the whole power structure where they're essentially telling you what's hot. Like the magazine's like, this is the best physique. So they're telling you, and you're reading it, you're impressionable with all the advertising and marketing and everything they put into it, because then they have to invest in their athletes. So they have a financial interest to basically sell you on a particular vision they have. But with the power of the internet and social media and almost a grassroots thing where people, it's like, whoa, yeah, you remember like that guy from 86, or how about that guy from 93? Or like, as you said, Terrence, like the early 90s guys like Kevin Lerone, like kind of having almost a renaissance or resurgence on the internet, almost seem to allow these things to happen, or to solidify that which maybe some of the diehards knew. Like, no, there can be a space for this. So I'm just wondering, maybe from your perspective, being also on that social media, being a fan of history, if you think social media overall has had a positive impact, or the internet, like, would you say it's been one of the instrumental factors of making classic bodybuilding what it is and what it potentially can be? Where almost that seismic shift, you know, where I even remember, and I don't mean any insult when I say this to open bodybuilding, but it was a thing on the forums on bodybuilding.com or whatnot. You'd have the Olympia and open bodybuilding, you know, there'd be the Olympia going on, and people would be watching and getting excited. And I kind of saw in a small, subtle way, like a shift started to happen several years ago. Let's just say, I'm going to give it the blanket of a more aesthetics focus. And I think there was a video by Arnold that was shared 3 years ago now, maybe 4 years ago, him talking about purports to kind of what you said, what he wants to bring back. Can you just talk about the role of social media in classic bodybuilding now, how it's been positive, negative, or maybe how you see it taking hold in the future, the changing landscape, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Man, yeah. I definitely think social media pretty much helped classic bodybuilding be created. I think that was a driving force with YouTube, with guys like Louis Marco. I think he was talking about that. Arnold was a big person. Lee Priest also talked about. There's a lot of actually retired bodybuilders that wouldn't even go to bodybuilding shows anymore because they just weren't interested in the new look. I think that, coupled with social media, definitely played a huge part in the creation of classic physique. And you know, I can't help but be thankful for those people and for helping that come along. So I think it's definitely can be a very good thing. Um, Let me see. I'm trying to think of some negatives in a sense. I think, I mean, I guess there can be some negatives, but it's not so much with how the direction of like the sport's going from like a judging standpoint. The only part I didn't really like was the people were trying to get doing the vacuum as a mandatory shot. I didn't really like that. I mean, it's never been that way. And if like going back to history, you know, I want to say I tried to find there's several guys that almost never hit a vacuum. I mean, they would hit it when they felt like it was, something they should do, but it wasn't like, oh, let me do this because I have to, because it always looks better. I think that flexing your abs is also a very a very good look. So I think that was the only real negative thing I've seen so far, or I wouldn't even say negative, but just something I didn't agree with. Uh, but overall, yeah, I think social media has been positive in highlighting certain things the bodybuilding community can improve on. You're always going to have negative stuff with social media, negative people, mean people. It can cause like issues with like people wanting to do an off season, so like body image issues and things like that, which sucks. I just think, but it also in turn, like it can still also be a good thing because now you have an outlet to tell people like, hey, it's okay to have an off season. It's okay to get a little bit, have a little bit higher body fat percentages. So it just depends on who you follow and how you utilize it, like, cause you can utilize it and follow a whole bunch of dummies, or you can utilize it and follow, smart people like yourselves. It just depends. And that's, that's true about anything in this world. How do you decide to utilize that particular, piece?
I think that's well said. And it's funny, if you're a history buff, you'd like this book, Terrence, but it's Muscletown, USA, The Manly Culture of York Barbell. And it's essentially the biography of Bob Hoffman, who was the dominant force in weightlifting, bodybuilding, and powerlifting, arguably, from the 20s all the way through the early 80s.
Oh, wow.
And there were competing voices, there were other people, but even when there were competing voices, you probably had 2 or 3 primary voices in each one of the Iron Games sports at different times. Of course, we can all think of the Weeders, who eventually won that race for dominance in the bodybuilding sector. But I agree with you that a platform is not inherently good or bad if we just mean a platform as a place to speak from and to be heard by a large group of people. You could make the argument, though, unless you're just really a fan of authoritarian dictatorships, which, they have their benefits. Things get done quick, that only having 2 or 3 people with the platform to speak for millions of other people, maybe not be good. So I do think that from that lens, social media does allow people to become their own platforms, and it avoids some of the issues we've talked about earlier in this podcast, like every bodybuilder from the 80s or 90s getting lumped in, like Omar said, with, oh, you must be supporting what Flex Magazine or what Muscular Development says. You did an arm article for them where you were in the pictures. That must be what you do. And it's like, not really. That arm article has been recirculated 100 times a year since 1960. So honestly, how difficult can flexing your elbow be? But yeah, I think it is really good that people have platforms. One thing I really appreciate you were talking about this earlier, is how you do Q&As and you directly engage with people on a regular basis. You expose yourself to potential critiques, arguments, and you stay up with the evidence. So you coach, right? Am I accurate in saying that? So as a coach and as engaging with people who I know value science and also critical thinking, like John Meadows, great person you work with, among others. I just think it's very cool that you have a platform because a lot of the times IFBB pros have been used to promote a supplement or a program or something else that they don't represent, but they are forced to do it because they signed a contract with Weider or a magazine, or that's the only way they have achieving income. Because regardless of what it's being sold, without distribution, which is essentially what a platform provides you, there's no demand if you don't exist, right? You can now self-generate demand instead of being at the whims of a larger organization, which, let's face it, most of the time and historically in bodybuilding is not interested in your integrity. They're interested in pimping you out. So I just think it's great that you have a platform and that anyone can have a platform, because then you're able to do something which aligns with your own values. So talk to us about how you use social media to promote information, your coaching, and share your own personal story.
I think so. I utilize a lot of Q&As because that's the easiest way for me to go about it. Um, and I usually take the time out to answer, questions I deem that are that are good questions. Certain things people ask that sometimes I challenge people. I'm like, hey, this question, you shouldn't be asking me this. You should, this is simple. Go Google it, and I'm guarantee you, with the question you ask, you can find the answer. I think respecting people's time is important too. But and I want people to think like that irritates me if you put no effort into it and you're just asking me questions. So, and I do the same thing. I'll definitely research something first. I'll look through someone's page to see if I can find the answer before I ask. So, just wanted to give some people that perspective first, before I get into it. But I definitely try to be pretty open with people about, how things change in my preps, how coach certain people, a lot of times coaches just want to show the best and the clients that can eat the most food do the least amount of cardio. So, I do like to share. I have been sharing stories here and there about clients that maybe had to do a lot of cardio, the 2 to 2 hours, or had to diet on very little calories, or, I've also done in the past, like, okay, I did like a little short, explanation of how I did a client's diet. And like, I said, okay, well, and I do like I kind of go back and talk about it. It's like, well, I could have did something differently here. Maybe we dieted a little bit too hard for too long. So I just like to be kind of upfront. And I don't think that hurts people's businesses. At least it hasn't hurt mine, with me being honest about things. And if I don't know something, a lot of times I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'll find out the answer. I think that's a much better way of doing things than, lying and making you seem like you do know something that you don't, because people will call you out on it real quick. And I think that is a bigger thing that can ruin your business for sure. I also utilize, I've been trying to do more YouTube videos to kind of give people a closer insight into my life. That's difficult keeping up with YouTube, but I'm working on it. And those are usually the main ways. Every now and again too, I like to talk about like my journey to get to where I am. A lot of people, just to give people a better idea. I'm pretty honest with people. Like, I think, some of my career has been very, very quick, like me turning pro. I think for me to get to where I am now has not been as quick. It's still not long, but not as fast. But I also like to, talk about guys like, well, John Meadows competed, 20 plus years before he got his pro card. And even then I give them, I give people perspectives on how, even before he was a pro, he was probably richer than 90% of, the bodybuilders out there while, working in the bodybuilding world. So I just try to give people a different insight, and instead of just posting some random motivational quote or, saying today's a good day to get better or something like that,
No, I love it. I think there's a lot of things you do which I think are low-hanging fruit, common sense, ethical things to do that are also good for business that a lot of other people miss. We've talked about this so many times. I don't want to spend too much time on an iron culture, just the old guard belief of positioning yourself as a person of authority and having no errors, and basically having an ego-driven message. And honestly, if you read that book Muscletown, you'll see where that came from. But the whole idea of I have all the answers, and when I prep people, they all get to diet on high macros. It's a great experience. They have their best time ever. It sets you up for disappointment or failure, or at the very least, blaming your failures on your clients and not getting better. So I think what you're doing is you're helping people have realistic expectations. You're helping them understand that there aren't quick fixes, that everybody's different, that these cookie cutter programs that used to be around in the magazines are not just what quote unquote everyone does or should do. And you're also putting yourself in a position where you're only going to get better as a coach. So I think it comes across, it's appreciated, and it's very cool for me to look up and to see not only a Q&A with an IFBB pro on a regular basis who's just answering questions, which was unheard of. You know, you had to organize this on the forums back in the day and get one of them to come in on bodybuilding.com and spend some time. But that you're also doing it the way you are, encouraging critical thinking, you know, telling people like, hey, you know, not that your question's dumb. No such thing as a dumb question. That's not true. There are. But your question is not going to one that really has an answer that's going to help you, or there might be a better question to ask. So I think there's a lot of things there that I really like and that I think are beneficial. And that's another reason why I wanted you to have you on Iron Culture. So I just want to say thank you for showing people how to have a platform that is helpful to the community as a whole.
Oh, thank you, man.
Omar, I'd love to get your thoughts on kind of the change in how some athletes are positioned versus now are positioning themselves, and how you've seen that change just in the time you've spent in the last decade plus on YouTube.
Yeah, you know, Terrence, growing up in the 70s, it was just a very different world from what we see now, you know, pumping iron, being out there, and just seeing those physiques going through, obviously, then the 80s, the development there. We already spoke about LeBron and everyone else in the 90s, but with the internet, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot more autonomy of athletes and them being able to fully embody what they want on their social media, and that must be a liberating feeling. I mean, when you said about individuals asking you questions and questions that aren't well researched, that basically, you know, a simple Google search or them looking up maybe your previous Q&As where you might have something you answered in depth. Let's just say like whatever, the off season, how I approach my macronutrients, and they ask you like, hey, Terrence, how do you approach your off season when it comes to macronutrients? Like, guy, there's like a video right here, like it's on my profile. You haven't given me the respect. It's like, therefore, not why should I give you the respect, but it's like you're now asking me for my time. And I can't help but think of my man Eric, the same idea where I'll see on his page on Instagram, there's like someone like whatever. So Eric, I'm like 180, I'm about 6 feet, and I'm looking to shed about 10 pounds. And Eric, it's like, where do I start with this? Like this, but it's incredible because actually what Eric said is that back in the day on the forums, to get even an IFBB pro to answer a question, like, hey man, like what's your favorite color posing trunks? You know, you have to coordinate it. It's a whole thing. It's like, it's Friday at 4 p.m. Don't be late, whatever. And so I think, and I've seen this, so I could say a few things. I think viewers and listeners and those that are wishing to kind of take in this knowledge should realize how much better things are now than before. And sometimes we forget that gratitude because it's just a known thing now. Like, oh, I have the internet at my fingertips. Like kids growing up these days, the Terrence aren't used to, you know, the 70s. They have access to the internet. They can just Google anything they want at any given time. They can message you. They could DM you right now, right? And like, there's a chance you're going to respond to them. You couldn't do that 20 years ago with an IFBB Pro, right? So they have all this access, and so the information is more readily available. And I think it's a symbiotic relationship, which is cool for the most part, right? Of you wanting to help people out. People see that transparency, they see the genuineness, they also see the efficacy of what you're recommending. So all these things coming together, it's like, hey, I respect that individual. Like I respect Terrence. I want to work with him rather than once again the more archaic, centralized version, autocratic that we used to see, where it's like, hey, this is the guy right here. Like Bob's the best bodybuilder. Here's what Bob does. You want to learn what Bob does? You got to buy his program. It's not like, hey, Bob, nice to meet you. It's like all those things fell by the wayside. So it's almost a return, what I like to think maybe, Eric, and I wasn't around, so that is a few decades before my time. But like when you said York Barbell or those other eras, or John Grimmick, where they used to describe some of these lifting environments where it's a hub, and because they didn't have access once again to the internet and they couldn't, you know, transcontinental and so many other things, they would be hubs. So there'd be a club, there'd be a gym, and it would be the environment, the culture of the gym that allowed this to prosper. And now we can kind of, you know, almost paying tribute, give back to the community. It doesn't take much, right? Like you doing a Q&A. I bet to some extent, Terrence, you enjoy it. You enjoy communicating with people. You feel probably a sense, I could say all three of us, a sense of fulfillment when you know you've helped someone out. And you know, essentially, that you're leaving this community in a better place than when you first entered it. So, you know, we have talked that shit a little bit, Terrence, before. on iron culture, just some of the dangers of social media, and there are many potential pitfalls, but there's also a lot of positives. And I think one aspect of this, just seeing you as an example, when Eric said, spreading that good information, making yourself readily available, right? And being transparent, man, you see the ripples through time, how this can have a big impact. And I think it sets up the community to be in a better place. And I think just lastly, the only thing I would say is just, all of us, when we recognize like game recognizes game, like, oh, you're doing a good job, or like Eric, same idea. You kind of want to amplify those voices because you want to give more attention to people that you think are doing a good job in your community. That's just one of the basic processes of the democratic process. So no, I think it's awesome, is what I could say. And all I'll say in closing, Eric, is Terrence, when you're back up in Toronto, let me know, and we could get a lifting session going on at the old Fortis Fitness.
Okay. I've never been to Force Fitness. I've never heard of it, honestly. But yeah, I'm definitely down with that.
Yeah, I'd love it.
It's a fantastic gym in Toronto, and good people behind it, as Omar will tell you. Terrence, I got 2 questions for you. One kind of goes back to earlier, and then one goes to the future. So we'll start with going back. Did you ever consider competing in the natural bodybuilding ranks, or was that even something you were aware of or considered as a future possibility for you?
I did one natural show. It was my second contest with the OCB. So I did do one. I don't know. I just saw the NPC, and my one critique, and I think you guys might agree with national organizations, is there's so many, and because of the amount, it kind of lowers the quality of all of them, And I think the benefit of the NPC is that it is kind of one centralized organization. So there's a bigger pool of people, and with a bigger pool, you kind of have, you're able to do more with the competitions. It's a lot more you can do because of just the amount of money you make from having the amount of people in those organizations. So I think choosing the biggest reason why I chose the NPC was honestly because the amount of shows they had, and the amount of people that were in the shows. But no, I definitely that was I think that was a deciding factor. There wasn't anything outside of that. Yeah.
No, that's totally understandable, and that's actually, we just had Bob Bell on. That episode came out today. He's one of the heads of the WNBF, and even he agreed that sometimes bodybuilding gets just too splintered, and natural bodybuilding, that is. And I think as a message to all the natural bodybuilding organizations out there, we could have had Tony Ruffin, folks. Come on, got to get our shit together. No, but in all seriousness, without looking back at the decisions you made, the question I have for you now is, what is the future for you? Where do you see yourself competing? Where do you want to go in the sport? And as someone in the community and in the industry, what's next for you?
I would like to win a couple more titles. Mainly, there's really just 3 more I would really like to have. I would like to win the New York Pro, maybe the Pittsburgh Pro, Arnold, and the Olympia. So I guess that's 4. So those are like competition goals I have. Outside of that, I plan on staying in classic physique. This is where I fit, and I really enjoy posing, and I think that has a really good future for me. I had a lot of plans this year. Posing wise, I wanted to actually venture outside of bodybuilding and do posing for more of the artistic community. There's an art show in Orlando, Raw, RAW artists. They have it all around the world here. They have it in Toronto, Montreal, everywhere. I would love to do that under the performance arts kind of umbrella, and kind of show people bodybuilding is a little bit more than just lifting weights. And I kind of draw back from the influence of, like you spoke about, having Ed Corney and Arnold posing in front of artists all those years ago. So I definitely would love to do something like that. I would love to pose in a music video. For even with this song I did recently, the 2 songs that I've had artists reach out to me and just say, they like what I did with their music. The one I did with Survivor and the one I did at the Arnold this year, they both appreciated what I did. I would love for them to ask me to, come on and join for a project, but I think that's a start that they appreciated it and they actually recognized it. So I definitely see myself doing more of that. And hopefully, I got invited to the rock show. It got postponed to, push back a year. So hopefully, I think that would be a good place for me to kind of present that because of the amount of mainstream people that are going to be there, like businesses and things of that nature. And so that's where I kind of see myself moving in the future in that realm. Competition wise, I enjoy it. I don't have a timeline. I'll just do it until I stop liking it or I stop doing well. One of the two. Years ago I thought I may retire at like, I don't know, 30, but now as I find that I just keep going until I don't want to anymore. So that's where I kind of see myself in the future, for sure.
I love the idea of you trying to really bridge bodybuilding into performance art. I think that would be dope to see you in a music video doing a posing routine. I think it would be awesome to see the potential, especially with the digital age, the potential of you collaborating with artists or being a part of art shows and seeing that people will watch it on YouTube. I think that's something that existed in bodybuilding a while back and then kind of went away. And it's unfortunate it went away because it was such a niche sport at the time that, and art was very niche as well, at least that type of art and that connection, that I think now it really could be something that gave people a really different perspective on what bodybuilding can mean or could be. So obviously I see it very much the same way. When I competed this last year in 2019, I tried to do a bit of homage to some of the classic poses and images of Frank Zane.
I saw it, yeah.
The
Frank Zane photo too was awesome, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I think there's that's really has a lot of, I'm not going to say untapped potential, but maybe untapped awareness. Because I think people are more likely to participate in something when it can mean different things and more things, and it can have a deeper connection for people. So I think you're a fantastic ambassador for the artistic side of sport, and I appreciate that. What do you think is the next competition? I know with COVID, it's up in the air, but when's the next time we're going to see you on stage?
Well, before all this happened, it was gonna be obviously Olympia September and then Athleticon in October. But now, with those two shows moved, this just December. The Olympia in December is the next show for me. Yeah.
That is exciting. So is there anything you want to say specifically about how you want to put Chris Bumstead on notice with that appearance? No holds barred. This is your opportunity. I'll be your Don King. You got this.
So I want to say I love Chris. He's a great ambassador. So there's no hate here. It's just competition. And we're all competitors wanting the same thing. But I will say I remember we did our first show together. It was his pro debut, and I beat him. And I definitely think it's very, very possible that I can beat him again. For sure.
So I'm going to translate what you said because you started with some fluff before then you got into the meat of it, which really was, I whooped your ass before, Chris, and you know what that feels like, and you're going to feel it again. I will see you in December. Merry Christmas, you son of a bitch.
Mic drop.
Last part. It's a little bit of editorializing, but that's pretty much what I heard, Omar.
Oh, yeah. No, it's going to be like the movie Troy with Achilles against Hector, where he finally reveals the mask and he reveals that it's him and he says, now you know who you're fighting. It's like when you just do the pose, like you'll have like either a mask on or something, and when you take it off to pose and you got the mutton chops, and you just look him in the face, and his mustache is quivering. Like, it's kind of like, it looks strong before, but in the wind, it's kind of like blowing like this. And he's trying to look at you with steady, serious eyes, but you already know, and I watch a lot of fights, Terrence, and a stare down can honestly tell you a lot. And when you say, now you know who you're fighting, and your mutton chops are just like, bah, bah, like that, just like looking strong, and your gaze, like, you're unwavering, not blinking, and he's like trying to look serious, but it's going like this. it's over. We'll know. Like in the comments, I'll be on the YouTube, because the host that stuff. In the comments section, like it's over. It's over. Oh God, it's over. Like we know an hour before the judges announce it, Eric, and everything else. Like it's already been done. It's a wrap.
Yeah, and I just want to start this hashtag. And to be clear,
Right.
This is definitely Terrence's promotion. We're just an unbiased news source.
Thank you.
Please hashtag and at us at dilapidated mustache. That's the hashtag to use that.
Yep.
We wanted to use something shorter, easier to spell, but we're going to go with that dilapidated mustache. That's the new hashtag, and that's going to be our prediction. Your official Iron Culture prediction.
Thank you.
For the December Olympia coming up, folks.
And Terrence, we're never wrong on Iron Culture, and that's a fact. Yeah, we statistically we're batting because we do our own self-evaluation of the information that we say, and yeah, we're batting at just about 100%. So I'll just say congratulations already in advance, my man. Yeah.
In fact, we'll come out and say it. Congratulations on your 2020 Olympia win, and early. So that's all we got, folks. Welcome to the 2020 Classic Physique Olympia winner, Terence Ruffin. And anything you want to say in closing? Do you want to graciously accept the award now, or we're gonna save that till the stage?
I'll just wait.
Okay.
I will have this on playback if I do win at the end of in December. You guys can play this back, and then I will accept it that way.
You know what's actually going to happen is he'll accept it, and then we'll message him to bring him back on, and we'll just never get a reply, and he'll just big dog us from that point on. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah. It's like Arnold reached out to guys. The Rock reached out to me. Thing is, I'd love to be on the Iron. What are you guys called? The Iron Steel Show? The Iron Jigsaw Puzzle? Oh yeah, sorry, man. We get it.
Steel
Terrence.
Society. Yeah.
That would never happen. I'll be back. I'll be back for sure. You guys are fun. You guys are like the most fun I've had on the podcast. For sure.
We'll take it.
You won the Olympia. We win the most fun award.
And you won our
I just
heart,
want to say,
so
yeah, exactly. I was going to say that's the true award. Even if you don't win the Olympia, which you already won, and we know we're right, you have won the Iron Culture Heart Award. So we're both going to be forever with you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Whether you like it or not. So I think, Omar, that's all I wanted to ask our glorious guest. If there's anything you wanted to touch on?
No, I mean, I thought, Terrence, you explained everything very well. We will talk off air about not a cult, but a new thing myself and Eric are into called Draperism. Dave Draper.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, that wasn't meant as an insult, but we're all the way in. When I was cutting, so Eric helped me get from a mighty 30% body fat to a svelte 21 last year, and he would give me, because he knew I was wavering like Chris Bumstead's mustache. Like every single night, I'm like, Eric, I'm gonna eat the pizza, and he would give me, because we're signed up to the email list of Dave Draper, just quotes like, no man, like hang tight. So we're gonna get you in on that too. So it's gonna be good.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah, we'll get you in the cult. We'll send you the Kool-Aid, and I don't know. You guys thinking dilapidated mustache is the hashtag, or maybe flaccid mustache? I think they're both solid.
Flaccid is just more accurate, I think, of what spiritually is going to happen.
You know what? We need this to go viral. How about flaccid stash? Hashtag flaccid stash. That's it, folks.
Yeah.
All right. Please make sure when you listen to this episode, my loyal cultist, to at Chris Bumstead and hashtag flaccid stash, which, for the record, completely Terrence's idea. We actually advised him against it before we got on. He said, no, I want to come out strong.
Yeah.
I want to put him on notice. And we said, are you sure? And he said, don't ever question me again.
Right.
And then we started the recording. And you can tell that really matches his personality. So
yeah.
Definitely, yeah, 100%.
All right, my friend. We appreciate your patience. We appreciate your willingness to come on the Iron Culture despite our zaniness. Is there anything you want to say before we conclude this podcast?
No, this was an awesome experience, and I just want to thank you guys for having me, having like a normal bodybuilder, to hop on the podcast with you, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I was waiting. I was like, oh man, they had Chris on here and John, and they haven't asked me yet, But yeah, it took you guys a minute, but it's cool. It's cool. I forgive you.
Well, we third time's a charm, as they say. If you're on third, you're the best. So that also gives us a second opportunity. If you place third in the Olympia, we can also claim it as a win for the cult. So those are your two options, first or third, to be clear.
Okay.
And yeah, no, our true pleasure. Really appreciate you being on. With that, Omar, you know what you need to do.
I'm going to close it out. And before I do, Terrence, my man, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and my website, roughdiesel.com, Rough Diesel, everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just Rough Diesel, everything. Yeah.
I got you. We'll have that linked in the description for those that want to check it out. I want to thank you for being on. This was a fantastic episode. I also want to thank everyone for listening to this episode. You can help the Iron Cult because, Terrence, we don't even need to go into it, but we're currently at war on iTunes, kind of like you versus Chris Bumstead. It's us versus the Sexual Health Podcast, which are ranking always high in health and fitness. And this is a true story. Iron Cult will be like number 45. That is true. On iTunes, number 45, number 50. But there's always, I sent a screenshot to Eric, Sex with Dr. Emily. So if you want to leave a rating review for us, we would appreciate it. We know you're going to give 5 stars. We're not suggesting what rating you should give, but we understand what you'll give in advance, dear listener, and we thank you for that. If you're on YouTube and you want to drop a comment, we do our best to respond. And we're back every single Monday from now until the end of time. We'll see you then.